Good evening, everyone. This is Planning Commission meeting of May 12th. And we welcome you to the commission meeting, and
Recording in progress.
And we will open with a call to order and the roll call, please.
Okay, sounds good. Chair Amadeo,
Here.
Vice Chair McCarthy,
Here.
Commissioner Herr, Commissioner Herr.
She excused herself for a moment.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Rana.
Yeah.
Commissioner St. John.
Here.
Commissioner Walton.
Here.
And Commissioner Whitson. I do not see Commissioner Whitson present tonight. So we have one absent, and no, Commissioner Herr is on the call, but looks like she excused herself. That's fine. So we'll check her in later. So it looks like we have quorum, Chair Amadeo.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with a moment of silence, and Commissioner Walton, if you would lead us in the pledge after a moment of silence. No?
Yes, ma'am. The answer is no. I'm sitting out.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I learned that that I was able to sit out even as a planning commissioner, but not have to.
You don't have to explain.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You declined, and that's all.
I declined. Thank you.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Perhaps Commissioner St. John, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner St. John. Okay, next we have special announcements and communications from the floor. So we open it up to the public. It looks like I have one person with their hand raised. Michael Owen, let me see if I can bring up my side screen. I don't know why it's not coming up, but Mike, I did see that your hand is up. So
I allowed him to speak, Madam Chair.
okay, so Mike, go ahead, and you have 4 minutes.
Okay. In the past 2 years, the Planning Commission has unanimously approved tree removal permits requested by the Dunes developer, and basically clear cutting. So when at the end of the Shea Homes presentation on 10 March, the Planning Commission, Doug Yott mentioned that he was bringing a tree removal permit back to the Planning Commission early April. A number of us who have been really waiting to try and prevent another clear cutting of all the rest of phase 3 sort of met that very first weekend, Sunday, at the site on First Avenue to see what trees were involved and so forth. We had a second meeting the next Sunday. And when we were on site looking at the trees that had previously been there, we're sort of dumbstruck. You could just think of all the adjectives to describe the reaction of like watching this whole line of 11 mature big cypress trees all of a sudden uprooted down the whole 6-line section. Okay, so then Monday, staff started to get emails from citizens about this and photos that we took. And at the end of Monday, the mayor and the city manager actually toured the site, and they were like aghast. The word is that the city manager had a really hard time sleeping Monday night. Okay, so fast forward to a meeting on 5 April with the city council developer who got raked over the coals. And then that set up another meeting that just happened last Tuesday. And the result was regarding mitigation and compensation. The saying is blessing in disguise. And it turned out that actually them removing these 7 trees without a permit was a blessing in disguise, because everything was set up before that point to just clear cut all the rest of phase 3. You guys have already approved it twice. So there was no reason to think that, they were going to have much trouble doing that. But because of the developer shooting himself in the foot, he really re-looked at a lot of whole details about actually being able to save trees along First Avenue and elsewhere. And these were actually trees that you had approved for removal 2 years ago. You found out, okay, when we look at this really, really close, we can save some of these. Okay, so the other result from last Tuesday's meeting is that the city council, who was trying to act as a tree committee, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they sort of said, like, we don't know what's going on. They wanted to see where the trees were. They didn't know what trees they're talking about. So there's going to be a public tour on site on First Avenue at some time in the next week or two, and all the commissioners are going to be there, counselors, and the public's invited, and you guys, the commissioners, are highly encouraged to show up also, because eventually it's going to come back to the normal procedure, and this is all going to come to you. So I would highly encourage that you attend this tour when it's available. And the bottom line for all of this is that, the council admits they don't know what they're doing about trees. They want to refer it to you. You guys have even less experience, like the council members. So the bottom line is, we need the tree committee. Please support trying to get the tree committee back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Okay, so I don't see any other hands raised. Let me check one more time just to be sure. No, there are no other hands raised, so we will close comment from the public. But do any commissioners have any announcements or comment they wish to make at this time? If so, please raise your virtual hand. And I do. Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. I got three things. The first one is this week, and I'm embarrassed to say it took me until Monday to really dive into the staff packet because I knew it wasn't really a public hearing. But when I went to the city website and noticed that the agenda was posted in a different format, I was just so elated. And I may be one of the few people that is affected by this, but I think that posting the agenda in the format that it is currently in really goes a long way into helping people access the agenda more easily, especially from mobile phones, from data connections, cell phone data connections. And, I think it better meets the spirit and intent of some state legislation that has passed recently that asks cities to do this. So, I really did do a happy dance around my office as I was reading the agenda, and I just want to thank staff for doing that. I hope it's something that can be kept up, and so I'll leave it at that. Second thing, as appointed folks that are appointed to a board or a committee, sometimes we get invites to things that the general public doesn't get. And an example of that this week was a presentation by Braver Angels, and it came from the Institute of Local Governments. But the good news is that this organization is open to the general public, and it really aims to help folks have communication with people of opposing views better. And so I just found the presentation to be extremely helpful. And I would encourage anyone either on this commission or in the public that's interested in improving their communication skills on, especially when talking about issues that they may disagree with a lot of people on, to check out the organization, braverangels.org. And then the third and last thing that I have is just kind of a reply to Mr. Owen's comment. Look, I don't know how to more strongly advocate for bringing the tree committee back. I think I've been one of the stronger advocates in the community on this issue, and I think it's badly needed. I don't know if staff feels that a lot of time has been saved by not having the tree committee instituted. I would argue that That's likely not true based on what I've seen. I think it's still consuming an enormous amount of staff time. But I will take every opportunity that I have to continue to advocate for bringing the tree committee back, and that's what I'm doing tonight. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you for indulging me, Chair.
Absolutely. Do any other commissioners have any announcements of public interest that they would like to share? You can raise your virtual hand if that's the case, and Vice Chair, you can put your hand down. Yes, Commissioner Walton.
And stop me if this is the incorrect place to make this announcement, but the Women's March is having a rally on Saturday. It starts at 10 at Windows on the Bay. So and support of reproductive rights. So I hope to see Marina show up out in Monterey at Windows on the Bay.
Thank you very much. And yes, that was appropriate. It's of public interest. It doesn't have to happen in Marina to be of public interest. So yes. Any other commissioners? I don't see any hands. Commissioner Walton, thank you. I have one announcement. I'm sure most of you are aware and may want to make sure the public is aware that on May 21st, Saturday, May 21st at Vince DiMaggio Park, there will be a celebration of life open to the public for our past Recreation and Cultural Services Director, Terry Segrist. He was certainly a beloved member of this community, worked extremely hard over his career here. And it's a wonderful way to honor him by attending, meeting his wife and family, and expressing to them how you felt about him in particular and what he did. So it starts at 11:30 and runs till 2. There will be a few guest speakers. There is a hot dog and hamburger lunch with cookies and water. So it's a light meal, but it's not about the meal. It's about remembering Terry. And I do hope I see a lot of you there. He certainly had a huge impact on the community and on me personally. So I would definitely like to see all of you there. So let's move on. And we will begin with the consent agenda for the minutes of April 28th. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
I make a motion that the consent agenda be approved.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Commissioner St. John and seconded by the Vice Chair. Are there any, is there anything that needs to be changed, or do you have any questions about the minutes? And if not, we can do a roll call vote. I see no hands, so let's do a roll call vote, please.
1 second. Let me get there. Vice Chair, I'm sorry, Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCarthy,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner Rana,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton.
Quick
I don't-
question: do I abstain because I wasn't present, or do I
You-
say yes?
You are allowed to vote on the minutes.
Yes.
And Commissioner Woodson's not here, so motion approved.
Great, thank you. So that was approved on a 6-0 with one absent. Let's move on to item 6, which is informational items, which is the agenda tonight. And Director, I'm going to try and say it, Perscone?
Yeah, that's fine. You can call me Guido. That's fine.
Okay, Guido. Director Guido, if you would lead us in this, or one of
Yeah,
your-
so just by way of context, so as everybody's aware, the state has significantly changed the ADU laws. When I started in planning back in 03, there was a change. and every about 3 or 4 years, it becomes more and more accessible. The last round of edits that became effective January 1st, 2020, basically made it, if you apply for the permits, the city has to approve it. And when I left Los Altos as the planning manager there, we'd actually approved 142 ADUs in a 2-year period. And that was done primarily with people's interest in it, but also working with ADU partners. ADUs are not the panacea for the housing crisis, but it's definitely a major tool for us. As they say, God's not building more dirt or land, so might as well use the land we have more effectively. And these ADUs are built on existing properties. And the bonus for the city is we can get a lot of credit for our housing element, regional housing numbers through these ADUs. So we really benefit as a city and as a staff by establishing partnerships with different vendors. And also the disclaimer for tonight, as a city employee, we're not endorsing any of the vendors, we don't have contracts with them. If something happens, if you pick one of these people, that's between you and them. So it's really, we're here just to showcase different ADU products, so the commission is aware of that. So when we do update the housing element, you're aware of all the different opportunities. And Alec from our staff, he's one of our contract planners. He's been working really hard to streamline how we're approving them. And so he's going to kick us off with some of the work that he's done in the last 3 or 4 months to help streamline the ADU permit. So I'm going to pass it off to Alec at this point. So
Great. All right, Alec.
Thank you, Guido, and thank you, commissioners. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So I want to walk you through some of the steps that the city has taken over the past couple of years to not only be compliant with state law regarding ADUs, but to really embrace the goals of the legislation, which, as Guido mentioned, is to increase the supply of affordable housing and provide different types of housing options for residents of the city of Marina. Let me just give you a quick overview of the timeline where we've been over the past few years. So in September of 2019, the state passed the first round of the most recent ADU laws, the ones that we'll be discussing tonight. Those went into effect January 1 of 2020. They've been transformational statewide because it's allowed basically any parcel in any municipality that has a residential unit, whether it's single family or multifamily residential, to apply for and receive by right a permit to build at least one ADU, and in some cases more, based on the provisions of state law. So we've been processing a number of these permits in the city since those laws went into effect. Cities had the ability under new state laws to craft ordinances that were compliant with state law. And what happened is if a city didn't craft an ordinance, then state law overrode any existing ordinances that were on the books. So for a period of several months in 2020, the city's ordinance was not compliant with state law. But by October of that year, we adopted a new ordinance that's compliant with state law and that allows Marina to retain basically the maximum level of control over development standards for ADUs. Then in January of last year, some statewide ADU funding laws went into effect. This provided funding for a number of grants that cities could apply for to help with the development of accessory dwelling units and with bringing local laws into compliance with state law. So one of those sources was the Local Early Action Planning Program. That's a grant that the city applied for and received. And we've been using that grant to assist with the development of the ADU ordinance, among other things. And then just in March of this year, the city launched an ADU website for the first time, which I'm going to show you here in just a couple of slides. This is designed to make the city's development standards presentable and easy to access so that people know what they're looking for when they try to build an ADU here in the city. And then just last month, the application process for ADUs is as of April now fully online. So we're very excited about that. Guido addressed some of this, so I won't go into too much detail here, but ADUs are important for a number of reasons. As you're all aware, we're in a regional and statewide housing crisis. A quarter of Monterey County residents spend more than 50% of their income on rent. Historically, 1/3 of your income has been seen as sort of a goal or what's seen as an affordable rent or mortgage. And so here in Monterey County, many people are spending much more than that on rent. There are more than 14,000 low-income rental households that don't have access to an affordable home. And ADUs won't address all of these problems, but they are an important development style that can make housing affordable to a certain segment of the population. ADUs are helpful to us as a city because we have regional housing needs allocation requirements that we have to meet, and we do get to count the development of ADUs toward those goals. So this is a really important way that the city can meet those requirements. And then the city's general plan, which is the guiding document that should guide all of our development decisions, has a number of goals and policies that are supportive of ADUs as well. The general plan calls for a high quality of life for all residents, a broad range of housing choices, and that we want to focus on conserving irreplaceable natural resources. So infill development certainly helps accomplish that goal, and providing a range of housing types through the provision of ADUs is another important way to meet those goals as well. So let's talk about what the city is doing now. As I mentioned, we have a new website online, sort of a one-stop shop where people can go to answer their questions about ADUs, download applications and forms, and then ultimately apply online through our permitting portal. So I'm going to take you to that website now. You can access this on our city website under City Hall by hovering over community development, and then you would click planning services, and it's available under the planning page. We have an overview describing what different types of ADUs can be developed in the city under state law and under our municipal code. There's a certain type of ADU called a junior accessory dwelling unit. And so that's another type of ADU that we talk about on the website. And then we have some informational handouts that people can download. I'll just show you one of these here. These include diagrams showing how you could create an ADU on your residential lot that would be compliant with city code. It includes all of the development standards for ADUs and then links to the municipal code and to the state government code on ADUs as well. And then we have some other forms and guidelines as well. The building department has a checklist that people can download to ensure that their permit application meets the requirements of building code. ADUs under state law, there's no discretionary permits that are required. So the only permit that you'd be required to obtain in order to build an ADU would be a building permit. So we are working closely with the building department to make sure that these processes are on our website and easily understood for residents when they come speak with us in planning. We have the ADU permitting process, just sort of breaking it down into 4 basic steps so that people know what steps they need to take in order to build an ADU. And then there's a flow chart that goes into that in greater detail. And then we have an FAQ section on the website as well. There's also a link to the online permitting portal. So you could click that link from our city website. It would redirect you to this page, and then you can create an account on CitizenServe. You would submit an application for a zoning clearance letter. So planning would get sort of the first look at an application, and we would check to make sure that it's compliant with the city ordinance. And then once an applicant has received clearance, they can use the same portal to apply for a building permit in order to build that ADU. So now I want to talk you through sort of what are our next steps, because our goal is to make this process as simple as possible and to try to streamline this process where we can so that we can encourage the development of more ADUs in the city. And I know that we have a developer here tonight who's going to be speaking about a certain type of product that's available. And what I want to do is just take it from the city's perspective. What can we do as a city in working with developers to make certain housing types easier to build within the city? So let me give you a few different examples of how cities across the state are doing that. The city of San Jose has taken an approach where you can submit to the building department a set of plans that you want to have pre-approved. And if the building official signs off on those plans, then that plan type is now what's considered a pre-approved building type. You can waive certain plan check fees, and generally the process would be streamlined and the cost for developing that type of unit would be less because it's a pre-approved type and it's easier to do. So there's a number of developers that have product listed on the website. In San Jose, I think there's upwards of 20 different housing types that are available. So that would be one approach that the city could take to try to encourage the development of more ADUs. The city of Encinitas, and actually our neighbor to the south, the city of Seaside has done this as well, sent out a request for proposals and had a limited number of housing types, ADU development types that were prepared by a single firm. And then those types were the only pre-approved options for that city. So you could go on the city's website, look at the pre-approved building plans, and then if you decided that that was a unit that worked with your lot and something that you wanted to build, it would be quicker and cheaper to build than starting from scratch. And then finally, the city of San Diego took an interesting approach. They've said that so any pre-approved plans that are accepted by the city of Encinitas or the county of San Diego, the city of San Diego is also accepting. And so that's another way that that Marina could encourage the development of ADUs. Maybe we look at what other cities are doing and say, hey, we really like what they're doing in city A or city B. These look like good housing types that we would like to develop here in Marina. And then as long as the building official signed off on those pre-approved plans, we could accept those in the city and try to streamline the development of ADUs that way. The other thing that we want to do is continue to update the website with the latest information so that residents are constantly updated on what the rules and regulations are for ADUs. As Guido mentioned, state law is always changing, and we anticipate there will continue to be changes to legislation regarding ADUs that the city will need to stay current on. We want to keep an updated FAQ section. And then we're open to other ideas as well. This sort of concludes my presentation, but I hope that we can have a discussion with you and get your thoughts on what else you'd like to see on the website and what else we can do as a city to encourage the development of ADUs here in Marina. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Do any commissioners wish to ask Alec questions regarding the website or anything else that he talked about during his presentation? Ooh. Yes, Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. So I remember when all this various legislation came out several years ago, a lot of it was catered towards multifamily properties. And as I recall, I think that they had the right to convert up to 25% of parking with a minimum of 1 unit into additional housing. And so my question is, has there been any effort to kind of, I see us focusing on the single family home zoning right now, but has there been any effort or any discussion on focusing also on reaching out to the multifamily zones and getting them to add additional units, or is that kind of a totally separate issue, or what can you say about that?
That's a great question. I think the one challenge in terms of streamlining with multifamily projects is that the pre-approved plans are probably not a realistic option in most cases for multifamily residential buildings. So that's one thing that the city hasn't done and probably couldn't do to help streamline the process. But I think that that's a good point that you bring up, that we could certainly look at outreach and making owners of multifamily properties in the city aware of these changes to state law if they aren't already.
Okay, and if you get a ministerial ADU permit, how long is that good for? In other words, how long do you have until you have to start building before the permits needs to be reapplied for?
Is it 2 years, Guido? I actually don't know.
For the planning permits here, I think the tradition is 2 years, but a building permit is it 4 or 6 months here, I believe? I'd have to
Okay.
check the muni code, but most building permits lapse after 6 months. Unless you call for another inspection, so.
Yeah, it's for the building permit, it's 6 months, and then they can extend it another 6 months if they want to. And then once the building permit is issued, it's good for, I think, a year.
Okay, and then I saved my most controversial question for last. And I'm going to try to phrase this into a question, but it has to do with ministerial review. And I kind of want to push back just a little bit on this idea that ministerial review only means that necessarily means that there can't be a meeting. So my understanding is that there can't be a public hearing where you weigh the pros and cons of a project, but there can in fact be a meeting. And in fact, some cities encourage, for example, design review, even though they're applying objective standards. It doesn't mean there can't be a design review meeting. My question is, one, would you agree with that? And two, are you familiar with any other cities that still send their ministerial review through some sort of public process?
So I'll answer. My understanding, Vice Chair, is that it is a ministerial permit under state law. If you meet the requirements of the ADU law, we basically have to give the permit. And if we were to potentially take it to a public hearing, that could be a source of potential litigation against us. It's supposed to be a fully, if you meet the requirements of the code. So,
well, and like I said, I specifically agree that the law prohibits necessarily a public hearing, but and I know this isn't the time for comments, but I do think that it's possible there's some value to having a public meeting, even if you're applying ministerial review processes. And I think the law actually specifically spells out that that's possible. And so I'd be curious in having that discussion more. And I'll make some comments maybe on that a little bit later.
did you want me to respond or just?
I'll just, if you have a response, that's great. I mean, I guess unless you're familiar that we're specifically not allowed to have a public meeting. Again, I know we can't have a public hearing, but well, let me rephrase the question. Are you familiar with any other cities that put these ministerial reviews through a public process? So a design review?
No.
Okay.
No, and as a matter of fact, when I was in Los Altos, I got 2 letters from a advocacy group that not NIMBY, but YIMBY, Yes in My Backyard, who very forcefully pushed back that, we couldn't have any public hearings on, and I've researched it pretty extensively. It's kind of analogous to if the city here ends up getting an SB 35 project. If we end up getting an SB 35 project, to your point, Vice Chair, technically you could have a public meeting because there's some loophole in SB 35. But for all intents and purposes, if you meet the requirements of SB 35, you have to give the person their permit. So it'd basically be a meeting just to have a meeting. And, you know, it would be kind of an awkward meeting, like, because it'd be like, all right, well, we're gonna have comment and now we have to give the permit. So it's a little bit of a kind of it would be an interesting meeting. That's all I'll say. So
Yeah, and I'm wondering, just as this is an informational item, I'm just wondering if there could be some value to be had to commissioners by going through that public process. So for example, when we go to look and create objective guidelines, we've gone through some series of public meetings for ADU applicants on which we can base our objective guidelines on. I mean, we've learned through that process. And so even though and again, I'm very careful not to use the word public hearing, because yes, I agree that would be inappropriate under state law, but some public process into where we kind of learn what's being brought before the city and how we may want to craft those objective guidelines in the future.
Well, so like I said, because I just came from Los Altos. So what we end up doing there is when I wrote the ordinance there, we end up putting language that said we strongly encourage people to make the ADU look like the house. That was as far as the state was willing to allow me. Actually, I actually met with the state like 4 times because we originally had in the ordinance there that we wanted the ADUs to look like the house, roof pitch and everything, and they took out that language and they said, Guido, the farthest you could go is say, we highly recommend and strongly encourage, but you can't technically, if it's 800 square feet and you meet the 4-foot setback and it's less than 16 feet tall, that's about as much as we can. And so that's why you're getting so many approved because so so.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, next we have Commissioner Walton.
There we go. Thank you. So I have I have 2 questions. The first one is loosely formed because I just I was listening to the comment. I'll ask the second one. Nick, can you talk about affordability? What is considered affordable? How would affordability be enforced if there is something that is sort of a rent cap, or is there rent control? And then do we know how many homes in Marina currently have enough space to allow an ADU or 2? And those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's no provision of state law or the city ordinance that addresses rent control for ADUs. So the primary way in which these could help with affordability would just be that it's a smaller housing unit. And if it's a pre-approved plan specifically, it should be cheaper to build because it's just taking pre-approved plans, something that you've done multiple times in multiple communities and reproducing that. So that's where the affordability component would come from. In terms of, I apologize, I've forgotten the second part of your question.
Oh, she asked about what potential homes were
thank you.
available.
Yeah, so basically any lot in the city that that has a residential unit on it is theoretically eligible for the construction of an ADU or JADU. It gets challenging with certain types of lots, but as Guido mentioned, if you can meet the base sort of requirement, 800 square feet, under 16 feet in height, and meets those 4-foot setbacks, that's something that we have to approve. And you can actually, on most lots, construct an ADU and a JADU as well. So you could do the small JADU through the conversion of existing space within the house, and then do a separate detached ADU as well.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
So I apologize. I just want to spend a little time with this because I don't understand. Um, or that what I'm asking is if with respect to our current population and the current homes that are available, um, how many of them have lots that would be big enough for these ADUs? Do we have a number for that, or do we know a statistic, a percentage of Marina that has available space? Like, I don't think the homes behind me here in the Shea or the Dunes have enough space to allow for these. I don't even think over their garages. Um, so I'm wondering, with respect to those types of limitations, do we know how many homes in Marina would have space for these ADUs? And then I guess my follow-up question, if this is okay, is with respect to affordability. If there isn't rent control and there's no enforcement, I'm not quite sure how these homes can be kept affordable if there's no oversight to um, to help create that path. Does that make sense? Like, I know it's probably up to the state how that all pans out, but for the city of Marina to say that, you know, these homes would be affordable when it's left up to the person that's renting the homes out, um, I'm not quite sure that we would be meeting those particular goals
Yeah,
if people
so
aren't supplying those homes.
so let me, Alex, let me try to answer. Um, we could certainly, and actually, if you go to the 21 Elements webpage, that's a webpage of all the planning departments in San Mateo County. There's actually a ADU link that shows you potential lots. We don't have that here in Monterey County, but as Alec was saying, basically every property is eligible for an ADU. You don't have to build up to 800 square feet. You could build a 300 square foot one, or a, you know, I mean, the minimum building code is 150 square feet. But yeah, so practically every property is eligible for an ADU. So we could certainly get the number of parcels in the city, but practically every parcel is available. Now, to your second question, that's a really good question, and that's come up a lot in the last 2 years, because you're absolutely right that while we will get credit as a city for the more that we help build and produce, and we'll get credit based on state guidelines in terms of different levels of affordability, in terms of actually mandating affordability at certain levels, that's not something that I believe under the ADU laws we're actually allowed to do. What some cities are doing, though, to combat that is, for example, 800 square feet, you have to approve 800 square feet. Well, some cities are saying, well, if you make it 1,000 square feet, we'll let you make it 1,000 square feet if you deed restrict it at a certain level of affordability. Or we'll let you go taller on the height if you make it a certain level. So there's certain incentives above the base that we have to approve by state law. So that's some of the, but to your point, that has come up in the last couple of years in terms of affordability.
Guido, can you explain the difference between, because I think the commission would appreciate this, between affordable by design, which are mobile homes and ADUs, just by the fact of their size, and affordability as it's used when you're talking about qualifying at various income levels. So if you could explain the difference.
Sure.
Because we're using the same word for actually two very different things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thank you, Chair Amadeo. So what the chair is referring to is, you know, there are certain housing products that are, just by how they're built and constructed, more affordable than, say, a traditional single family home. So the ADUs is the example, the mobile home parks. So that's one definition of affordability, right? What Commissioner Walton was referring to was, is there a way to guarantee at, say, 50% of the median income that the ADU is going to be rented at that specific income? The answer is, under state law for the base 800 square foot ADU, no. But like I said, some cities are saying, well, we can give you more square footage or more height or whatever the incentive is if you agree to deed restrict it at a certain level of affordability. So those are the two affordabilities that the chair was referencing. So
Thank you, Guido. All right. Do you have any other questions before we move on to Commissioner Rana? No. Okay, so Commissioner Rana, you're next.
Yes, my question is that while building an ADU, is there any obligation for creating an additional parking space? And if none, then how is city going to manage the congestion created due to more ADUs coming up in any locality or in a city? Thank you.
yeah, I'm actually gonna, Alec actually wrote the ordinance. So Alec, you wanna take the parking question?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. It's a great question. And the answer is generally no, the city cannot require additional parking spaces with ADUs. And in fact, if you're creating an ADU through the conversion of an existing space like a garage, we can't require a new parking space for the new unit. And we also can't require a replacement parking space for the garage that was just converted. So the reason that is the case is because most of the city of Marina is served by transit. Most of Marina is located within 1/2 mile of a transit stop. It doesn't have to be a high service stop, which is something that has 15-minute headways. As long as there's any kind of bus stop, transit stop within a 1/2 mile radius of the location of the ADU, then state law doesn't allow us to require parking spaces.
Thank you.
And the congestion is and parking is a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner St. John.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Amadeo. I think I've narrowed it down to just 2 questions now. Does the current property zoned single-family residential? Does the ADU state laws trump cities zoning restriction?
So
Two families.
yeah. So the base zone, like, for most of these are built in the R1 single family. So the base zoning stays what it is. We're just adding additional units to the property, but the base R1 zoning remains. So the zone has not changed.
But the zone then is single family residential.
Yes, it's zoned single family residential.
But if you rented an ADU to a second family, is that a violation of the city's zoning law?
No.
Okay. Enough of that.
That is where the state, the state has, the state has declared a housing crisis. And if you read all 6 of the ADU bills, which I wouldn't encourage unless you want to fall asleep, that they specifically preempted the cities in this instance and said, no, you can't treat it like it's multifamily and you can't add a bunch of requirements. You basically have to approve the permit. So
My second question is along the same lines. If the subdivision you're in, the property is in, has an HOA that has some serious restrictions they don't specify that no ADU, but other covenants would an ADU impossible. So does an HOU covenants and restrictions that are attached to your deed, the property's deed, do they stand above the ADU, state ADU law?
No, a lot of those ADU covenants and old HOA CCNRs were expired as of January 1st, 2020.
I bought a house, my own situation. I live in Sea Haven, and I think Sea Haven is a very strict HOA. And they would never allow the conversion of a garage. They would never allow the building of an ADU if you have plenty of land.
Yeah, you and I could probably talk offline, but basically, if you have a single family parcel, you do have a right to an ADU, and we can certainly work with you in terms of your specific situation offline.
I was just trying to understand the strength of the ADU law.
Yeah, and just by way of context, actually, I live in an HOA in San Jose, and there was some discussion, and actually I had to give a presentation to my own HOA to tell them, yeah, you actually have to approve ADUs. So I almost got tarred and feathered by my own neighbors, but yeah, they asked me to game and spoke to them a couple years ago. So yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you, Guido.
Any other questions, Commissioner St. John?
No, that's all.
All right, Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you. And I think my question isn't as much a question as it is a concern under rent tenants' rights issues. And I know that's not necessarily a planning commission issue, but it's one for the city and I think across the state, which is when not as much ADUs, but when conversions and when JADUs are constructed by owners, and we have a large percentage of our housing in the city that are rental properties. And when these are built, what become the controls in that, and what is the state doing to update the rental owner tenant agreements to protect our renters in the state? And again, I know this isn't necessarily a zoning planning issue, but it's more of just an overall legal issue of California has very strict owner tenant responsibilities. And it seems that the ADUs literally have been shoved into the process without anybody ever updating that policy. And I was just wondering if you had seen how that is implementing other states, because there are anecdotal evidence already on the peninsula that ADUs are being put in, and renters are being told, hey, by the way, the day it's happening, that construction starts and that things are affecting. And I'm just wondering how other communities are dealing with this, because it's not a legal issue, it's a perception issue.
Yeah. I mean, that's unfortunate if a landlord were to do that. There is some tenant landlord stuff that unfortunately as a city, we don't get involved with, but actually Nick's on the phone and Alec as well. They actually do enforce the deed restrictions. And Nick, if you're there, did you want to elaborate on what our deed restriction process is?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it will answer Glenn's question. Our deed restriction process, when I first got to the city, we didn't have one in place. So I created a deed restriction form. On it, it stipulates that whenever an owner basically builds on these ADUs, they're required to file this deed restriction, and it states that the ADU is accessory as an accessory use. It's not a full unit, so therefore it can't be sold separately. It cannot be rented as a short-term rental, and in Marina that means less than 30 days, and then it has to be built per the building permit and the state law of how big it is. So limiting on the size. So that's requirement for both ADUs and JADUs. In terms of state law that pertains to tenants' rights and ADUs, there's not as much control from the state level. Local jurisdictions have the ability to add controls that would help protect tenants in these situations. So, for instance, breaking a material term of a lease, that's controlled by state law. And without rent control or some form of rent control, landlords have the ability to break a material term, remove a service. So for instance, if you have a garage space as part of your rental, a landlord could convert that garage to an ADU, and with just a simple in writing notice per the state code. So there's not a lot of protections for removing stuff like a backyard or removing a garage for a tenant. And that's just the way the state created the ADU law. They prioritized these types of housings over tenants' rights. And you're starting to see more and more with new laws that they're coming in, like they're thinking more about tenants' rights, but that's more of the last 2-3 years thing. Whereas this ADU law has been sort of been made and created over a longer period of time to address the housing crisis, and it hasn't really been updated for tenant rights. But the city could add rules that would help protect them. So hope that answers your question.
No, it doesn't. Like I said, the state is pretty prescriptive about all that, and all the things that were put in place when this first came out are all following exactly what the state basically said. It's like, well, either do what we say, or we're going to take control of the process anyway. I mean, that's how we got to where we are today. It's more just a concern of, okay, what type of community are we, and is there a way to at least escalate our comments that we would like that? I mean, I don't think there's anything we can do. Even doesn't feel like there's even on the deed restriction side, there's a lot that we can do, unless maybe we say, well, you can make that, but you have to give at least 30 days notice. You can't give 24 hours.
Yeah, they're required by state law to give tenants notice if they're going to remove something. And they're required by law to give them, I think it's either 30 or 60. I'd have to look at the law. But yeah, they are required to do that by state law.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Vice Chair McCarthy.
I'll keep it really quick because Nick really answered the question I was going to ask. But I will say that San Francisco has a new requirement that when ADUs are built, that they must notify the tenants, and they have a form for that on their planning site. So I guess just formed in the phrase of a question, has anyone, Nick, have you seen that, what San Francisco is doing in regards to that?
So San Francisco has rent control. The city and county has a rent control ordinance and a tenant protection ordinance. And so as part of that, when you see a city that has tenant protections in place, you see a higher level of noticing and information and education to the tenants. The city of Marina doesn't have a tenant protection ordinance or a rent control ordinance. So, it's up to the legislators and the council members and the public to ask for stuff like that of staff. I know that there's been some rumblings of that in the peninsula, but it hasn't gone anywhere in other cities. So, we could require that tenants, we could request that tenants be notified when we do ADUs. We could add that to the process. I don't think that's a bad idea. Based on conversations I've had with tenants, I've now started informing applicants that I highly recommend that they inform their tenants about the process of what they're going to go through, the timeline, and let them know the impact to the tenants ahead of time. So I have started to just verbally tell applicants that, but I haven't done anything. We haven't formalized that. That's just from my talking to the public and learning.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything else from the commissioners. I do have one question. This discussion that Alec brought to us, part of it was about having pre-approved designs that to streamline it for the customer. And is it possible that those designs would first come to the Planning Commission for our approval, and then they would be part of that streamlined process? Or is this just going to be done ministerially, and we won't have, the public won't see this through the Planning Commission, what they might be interested in advance of doing an ADU?
I'll let Alec answer. I don't believe, Alec, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was more done at a staff level. It wouldn't hurt to get some input from the public, but Alec I believe it's more of a file it with the building department. They make sure it's all good to go structurally and building wise, and then it's put out there. Is that correct, Alec? Or
Yeah, that's correct. It would still need to be a ministerial process. So the main thing is that the only requirement would be that you have the signature of the building official on that set of pre-approved plans, and then but there wouldn't be any kind of ministerial review of those plans.
Okay, so planning commission won't see any of this. The public won't see anything unless they go on the website and they go, oh, if I do this, it'll be faster than if I bring in my own plans. Is that correct?
well, I mean, so I'll answer yes and no. I mean, so we could rope in the planning commission to look at some of the designs that are out there and kind of get your general input, or it could just be done at a staff level. And what you alluded to is basically what we're trying to hopefully get to, which is somebody comes in and says, I like the Model T version 1, 2, or 3. Okay, I want number 1, and I pay my school fees, I pay my water fee, I pay whatever other fees the city asks for, and hopefully in a day or a week or whatever, here's your permit for your ADU. I mean, if we're able to get to that level, that will really show the state HCD that we're real serious about streamlining ADUs here in Marina.
Yeah. I was just thinking if there was a public meeting where the community would see in advance that there are these units that have already been pre-approved and their process will be much faster and smoother if they pick one of those. It's informational. I'm not saying, oh, you know, we're going to pick items A, F, and Q, and the others we're not going to allow. It's just like any other informational presentation, and letting the public know that
Absolutely.
and we therefore are also able to ask questions about those various plans on behalf of the public.
Absolutely. That sounds like a yeah, we can certainly arrange that.
Okay, Commissioner, and I was going to use your first name and mess it up completely. Commissioner Herr, please.
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, there was instance after I joined this commission, it was the same case where I think the applicant was trying to build 2-story, ADUs, and we didn't let it pass at the time, due to the, kind of nuisance that it could cause to its neighbors, having 2-story ADUs. So with this new ADU streamlining, does that include only 1-story ADU, or does that include 2-story ADU? And also when we were having that discussion, I think it was last year, we talked about creating an ordinance on some kind of regulation that if it is 2-story, then, if it's the new house plan, then, those ADUs will be approved. But if it is existing neighborhood, due to the possible, nuisance that it could cause to surrounding neighbors.
Yeah, so Alec and Nick actually were here. Actually, Alec helped write it. So Alec, do you want to provide some background on this section of the ordinance in terms of the height?
Yeah, so that absolutely. So generally it is true that if it's new construction, you're limited to 16 feet in height. What Commissioner Herr was referencing is this revision to our city ordinance. So there is an exception to that height rule in place for a new construction if it's part of a new construction subdivision. And the goal there was with the development of new housing to create ADUs that could be located above garages, because the city wanted to encourage these new units to also provide off-street parking for those residential units. And so that's why that change was made. I think it's a 25-foot height requirement in that situation.
So real quick, just for my education, Alex. So if it's part of a new house construction, walk me through it again? I'm sorry, I didn't follow that second. So it can go up to 24 feet. I guess that's what the code says.
Yeah, and it's I'm just pulling up the portion of code that addresses this. So if it's in conjunction with a newly constructed primary single-family dwelling unit on the same lot, and you're providing off-street parking, then you could go up to 20. Is it 24 or 25?
Yeah, it says 24 in the
24. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but in order to get that, you'd have to provide off-street parking, and then the ADU could be located on a second story above the off-street parking garage.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good.
Any other, did that answer your question, Commissioner Herr?
Yeah.
Okay, your hand is still up. Did you have
Okay.
anything else?
Sorry.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Let me see if there's anyone in the public. And nope, we don't have any public here at all. So if we can move on to the next item.
Great. And so just as a wrap up, because Alec is running point on the 80, so it sounds like there is interest with us coming back in, say, 60 to 90 days, and Alec can give an update about where we're making progress on the pre-approved plans. And I understood Commissioner Walton wanted to have a good number of number of parcels or properties that were potentially eligible. It'll probably be quite a few parcels, but we can certainly provide that. So we will come back and say 60 to 90 days, and Alec can give an update about the 80 if that's kind of the will of the commission. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding of heads. Okay, now we're gonna pass it off to, who is next, Chair?
This is the Abodu Housing,
Yeah.
John Geary.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello,
is it-
thank you. I'm not John Geary, but
I was gonna say, you don't look like a John.
I am standing in for John Geary. My name's Ann Brask, and thank you all for having me. I can go ahead and share my screen here. Great. Okay. Excellent. So I'm Ann. I lead our planning team here at Abodu. We are an ADU company. So thank you again, commissioners, for having a big ADU night. And thank you, Guido and Alec and Nick, for all of your work at the city of Marina. Excited to kind of talk about Abodu, what we do, and some of the cities we've worked in. But yeah, I think that was a really great discussion. Just a lot of information on state ADU law, and we've been working really, really closely on that. I actually came from the San Francisco Planning Department, so I've worked on the other side as well. I've definitely share a lot of empathy and understanding from that side. So fun to be on this side of the counter, as they say. But yeah, Abodu has worked with cities up and down the West Coast. We're a detached, prefabricated ADU company. We service all the way south to San Diego, all the way up to Seattle. And we've found, some cities have a lot figured out. Some cities are starting just new and understanding California state laws. And it's really exciting to see Marina's webpage, and there's just like a one-stop shop that you can see it all. So a lot of kudos to you and the team on picking that up and creating that for us. It's obviously really helpful as someone who leads our planning team, and we submit projects every day. So a little more about Abodu. We build well-designed. Obviously, we care a lot about design, modularly constructed ADUs. We manage the whole process. So we have a sales team. Obviously, we have our permitting and planning team, and we have a construction team, and we have crane partners that, since the unit is completely built in the factory, we coordinate the installation with the crane to happen on delivery day. It's a really fun thing to see. We worked really closely with Guido and Los Altos on a couple installs there, and ADUs that we had permitted there. But really the mission is to just make it a process super simple, right? I think what we found with a lot of the homeowners we work with is trying to work with city governments is really, really scary to them. So the fact that Abodu handles it is huge, and we are happy to do that. But yeah, basically one-stop shop, right? What the prefabricated means, which is certainly new and unique about a Bodu, is that we're really only in the homeowner's backyard for about 3 to 4 weeks. So that is worlds away different from, a stick build typical development project where you have a construction crew driving and visiting to the site, working on your backyard. You got construction crews there every day. This is a lot different. So we try to cut that construction time down. We work really closely with our, obviously, on-site teams and crane teams to align that and make it really streamlined. What's also cool is that we've seen a lot of different uses for the ADUs. I think, you're all talking definitely a lot about rental options, right? And I think that's certainly one of the use cases we've seen. We've over 100 ADUs up and down California, and we've seen use cases from definitely rental, but also grandparents aging in place. We've seen the college kid come home from school and wants to stay with mom and dad. Maybe they graduated, they want their own home, right, in the backyard that isn't they're not priced out of their own town. It's an option for students, in fact, as well as, it could be an extra office space. We're all in COVID. We all experienced the pandemic and needing to kind of expand our own main homes without doing a really long addition on the side of your home. So it's a great option for a lot of people. The other thing I wanted to talk about was that all of our ADU products are less than 16 feet in height. They're all under 800 square feet. And we have 3 different types. We have a studio, a 1-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom. So one of the kind of topics you were all discussing, right, was having your options of, this one fits for our family or this one fits for my needs. And really, a Bodu came out of these new state laws that California introduced a couple years back. So because of that, we structured the product and the unit to work within those limits and say, okay, we're only 13 feet in height, right? We're less than 600 square feet in all our units, and really an easy way to add housing. So I think, we've talked a lot about the RHNA targets. I'd say they're aggressive in cities up and down the state, right? And it's not only just the housing unit that can help with RHNA targets, but it's also the actual ADU program that can count towards this to the state to say, hey, we're making an effort here to meet our housing unit goals. And I think, what we would like to do, right, is talk a little bit more about our partnership with other cities in the past year or so, and really talk more about what could that streamlined process be. And I think Guido and Alec covered it a lot, so I won't spend too much time on that, but I can certainly unpack a little bit about what we do in San Jose. So what we did is something similar that you all were discussing, right, was give our first plan sets to the city. So Bodu is a little bit unique too, that the actual unit and architectural plans are approved by the state. So over here in step 1, we've already gotten those approved by California under its factory built program. This is sometimes confused with manufactured homes. So manufactured is kind of more of what you'd think with the mobile home park, factory built program, obviously pretty different. We certainly care a lot about design and quality and all of that. So the superstructure is actually inspected in the factory. So really when we come to local jurisdictions are only looking at, right, planning, obviously, setbacks, height. And then the fire department, of course, looking at access, and public works, looking at our utilities or if we need the crane to install the unit. And then the building department looks at our foundation design. So our foundation design, it's the same on every unit, pretty standard T-footing. But unless it's in, I'll do a slight asterisk there, unless it's in, of course, a geohazard or flood zone, those are really special soils that need, obviously, a more serious foundation. So what we've done in San Jose is we've kind of cut this part out, the local building reviewing the foundation design. And we've said, hey, San Jose, review our plan sets, take a look at the architectural plans on all 3 units, the foundation design. If you think that this is something that approves, we work back and forth with them. We paid normal permitting fees as if it was a typical project. San Jose said, okay, yep, looks good. We kind of got to a place where everyone was happy with that. They sort of set that aside, put it as a standard plan number. And now every time we come to plan set San Jose, they're really just looking at the site plan and double checking that nothing has changed in the plan set. And what we've been able to do is squeeze that, for a 12-week review time down to 1 day. Everyone gets on a Zoom call, planning, fire, building, and public works all on one Zoom call. It's kind of amazing that all departments are there coming from San Francisco, or no one spoke to each other, right? And it's great. We all get on. Everyone's like, oh, hey, Anne, how was your weekend, right? We've really established not just familiar faces, but a lot of trust in just who we are and learning the Bodu, and that we care about meeting the same housing goals. But we talk for an hour, right? We talk about the site. We discuss kind of where the Bodu will sit, that we meet state development standards. And then at that point, we get our permit and we're able to kind of say to the homeowner, hey, you're going to have your housing unit in 2 to 3 weeks because our unit from the factory is ready to go. At that point, we just connect to the local foundation, and obviously inspectors in Marina would come out and make sure our foundations are correct, setbacks meet, all of that. So it's an incredible process. And I think just in San Jose alone, we've installed probably 35 units in the last year, which is a small chunk, but certainly provides a lot of options for people who are looking for those housing units, or even just looking to find a place for grandpa, grandma to stay. And I think at this point, we're excited to keep working with Marina, and excited to work with you, Guido and Alec, on developing the program further and what you'd like to see and how we can help. And I think I would echo a lot of what was said of this isn't specific to a Bodu by any means. And I'm here to really just show you some pictures of our product, and it's obviously my favorite. But it's really a rising tide lifts all boats for us and for me. And I think Bodu is coming at this from let us help, cities kind of alleviate a lot of the staff time that you put into projects. And yes, the state has come down with these development standards and these laws that say, hey, if it's less than 800 square feet, less than 16 feet in height, meets the setbacks, looks good, then we can hopefully save everyone a lot of time. And not just overly, all the permitting departments have a ton of projects, ton of work on their hands. Homeowners are eager to get units installed. We save time, and we can therefore save costs for everyone, and make more low impact, right, quality housing units faster. So that is a Bodu. That's what I'm excited about, and really look forward to working with you all, and certainly here for questions.
Okay, thank you. If there are commissioners that have questions, it is now time to raise that virtual hand. And so far, okay. Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying hard not to be the first to raise my hand, but it's just the way it goes. 2 quick questions. If you're willing to share, first of all, excellent presentation, absolutely beautiful products. They're just so pleasing to look at. So I really appreciate that. But my 2 questions are, again, if you're willing to share, where is the factory, and is union work being done to construct these homes, or what's kind of the wage situation there?
Sorry, I'm just jotting down your questions so that if I can't answer them, I'll be able to follow up. We have several factory partners, and I can't disclose exactly who those are or where they are, but they are on the West Coast, and we think a lot about how we can cut down on commuting costs and transportation fees, and making this kind of, how can we think more sustainably about that? And one option we've thought about is having more of like a yard situation, where you think of it in sort of a car dealership is not a great metaphor, but bear with me, where you go to the car dealership and you say like, yeah, I want this one with the, the shelf and the built-in bench, and that's the one. And okay, great. it's there. Or you maybe say, I want a custom build. I want to add a couple different things to my abode. I want a different siding that's special and ordered. Then you're looking at a full factory build. For the ones in the yard, we're thinking, hey, what if these are kind of closer to major areas we sell in? What if they can just travel a much shorter distance, right? Like think of it as like the last mile. When you think about transportation, I think that's a cool solution that we're thinking about of not only does it like cut down on some transportation costs later in the game, but it also offers units faster to people when they say, yeah, that one looks good. And I love the one that you guys have built already. So as far as the union labor, I would have to check on the factories. I am not our kind of factory expert, but I would assume so that they are, union workers, but I will certainly write it down and follow up there on that one.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering. It seemed like it might be a question that was asked by other cities. And so, I would think especially if a city is opting to support a certain set of plans, they're probably going to have some preliminary questions about the sustainability, right? The environmental impact of the company that they're kind of quote unquote supporting. But yeah, if you could get back with staff, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I think, no, I love that you brought up sustainability, and it's something that's top of mind. And, I think there's a lot of layers of Abode that is touching sustainability. So I've been working with our product team a lot on kind of like, hey, what's our dishwasher and our washer dryer unit and all of our appliances, our shower head or our toilet, are they all low flow and high efficiency? How are we doing that? So we have a great deck that I'd be happy to provide too that kind of talks more about appliances. And on top of that, I kind of mentioned the factory built piece that I think is inherently sustainable in this way that is, we're not bringing construction folks to the site every day, right? I think cutting down on that cost and like not only just construction that lasts 4 to 6 months, it's construction for a month. So it's not only like noise pollution, but it's like people in the backyard for that long. It's a big difference. And them kind of driving from Brentwood or wherever, contractors are to get to a site. It's a lot. It's a lot of vehicles miles travel. So definitely would say that just inherently it feels like the factory built option is a great way to save on not only transportation, but also material cost.
Thank you again. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, Audra.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. And I just want to echo Vice Chair McCarthy's comments. Great presentation, great line of products. I'm a huge fan of tiny homes, and if I could own one or two, I would. And so my question is, with respect to price range, if you wouldn't mind disclosing I think you said studio 1 and 2 bedroom. Can I get a price range for those? Is that possible?
Thank you. Go to our website real fast to make sure that I have the most updated information. It is so our studio unit starts at $199,000, and then I think our 1 bedroom is at likely $250,000. I think is the latest. And our 2 bedroom is I have a very specific zip code because of, so yeah, our 1 bedroom is at the 242, and then our 2 bedroom is at 288. And I think something I would say about the pricing, I mean, something we think about too is that 2 bedroom, right? While it's $288,000, that's not cheap. That's not, I'm here to say that too, but it is about $1,400 a month if you think about it as a rental unit, which a 2 bedroom for $1,400 a month in a beautifully designed home, right? It starts to make a little more sense. And you think about renting this out to college students or 2 roommates living, in Marina, it does make a little bit more sense when you compare it to the market. I would also say that we are hoping for those prices to come down, right? So I think everyone is being hit hard by inflation and factory timelines and construction costs. So I think, they're higher, I think, than all of us would like them to be at this time. But yeah, that's where our starting costs are. And we're all working on the inflation together for sure. So yeah.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? I don't see any more hands. Okay, I do have a question. I'm assuming that the homeowner that wants to build the ADU would first be coming to you as the builder of the ADU, and then once they have the plan that they want, they then go to the city, or you go to the city on their behalf. Is that correct?
Exactly. So in some cities,
Can I
the way
finish?
we-
That's
oh.
half my question. Can I
Oh,
finish?
okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
So from the point when they come to you to the point where it's ready for occupancy, what's the timeline there? Because I'm seeing timelines, but it's not from start to finish.
Sure. I love that. I love that. It's a great question. And I would say, honestly, a lot depends on the permitting. So typically what happens, right? So we have a couple options. Like I mentioned, there's kind of like an off the shelf option, right? We have units done. They're ready to be installed. They're kind of made with what we've seen homeowners love is the options and upgrades, right? They usually pick the bench. They usually pick the curbless shower, whatever it is. So we have those ready to go. We also have options that say, hey, you want something custom built. That timeline is about 6 months, right? So if you say I'm a homeowner, I want something a little more specific, maybe I want these finishes, you're looking at a 6-month factory time. So within that timeline, I feel very confident we'll have the building permit, and I can say, okay, great. You signed the contract. We'll go ahead and put your order in. Meanwhile, we'll work on the building permit in the background. And then once it's done in the factory, it's probably a week or two for it to get to your house. Now, if you say, hey, I like this one that's already done and it's ready to go, we completely depends on the permitting process. So in San Jose, our fastest install was contract signed. And then on day 34, because of San Jose's permitting process, we were able to install on day 34, which is incredible. It's a housing unit in almost a month. And it was a really cool success story. So it's not all of them, obviously, right? So some of it's like, okay, a month, 2 months, 3 months for the permitting process. But at that point, right, the bottleneck is the planning team and working with the cities. So it could be 6 months is looking at kind of the long timeline, I'd say. And just shorter could be a month, 2 months. Yeah.
Well, I think this question actually goes to staff, because you're talking about the staff side as well as yours.
Right. Yeah.
So my question to staff then is, if we have pre-approved plans that the customer wants to use, what is the process timeframe from when they come in initially to the city and when they would have building permits based on what the state law is now?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to give you an answer now because we don't have that as of now. But like I said, the goal is, and like I said, Alec is running point for us on the ADUs. But really the goal is to have those pre-approved plans, which means that they've already been plan checked by the outside plan checker. And then hopefully further refine the process where we can quickly get the water district fee paid and verifying they've paid their school fee and this, that, and the other fee, and then boom, hopefully get it to them as quickly as possible.
So when they go to our website for ADUs, the checklist will show them the things that have to be done on their part. You're talking about water and school fees paid, et cetera, et cetera. And when that checklist is completed, then they're ready to go. And so is it up to the city how fast that checklist would go through, or is it up to the person who is adding the ADU how fast that goes? How much of it is about them and how much of it is about the city?
Well, development is a two-person dance, so we work as fast as we can, but sometimes we send comments to customers, and then we send it to them April 1st, and then they don't get back to us until May 2nd, and then they email the city manager and say, the city held up my permit for 31 days, and you're like, well, actually, so it's a little bit of both, but like I said, the goal is to make it as streamlined as possible. And Alec, do you want to show them the website in terms of what we have up now so far, in terms of, I know you previewed it a little bit, but in terms of some of those FAQs or some of those outside agencies?
Yeah, I can pull that up.
Okay.
My screen ready here.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, you're showing us the hydrology isolation of existing wells. Who's that?
Oh.
Is that you, Alec?
Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen. My
Yeah.
apologies.
No problem. No problem. No problem.
Let's try this one more time.
I'm sure that's fascinating work. So.
It is fascinating. All right, are we on the right screen now?
Yeah. So the
Yes.
question was like, how are we interfacing right now with the different kind of outside agencies?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
obviously
what the obligations are of the owner of the property, the city of Marina, and this is with a pre-approved product that basically you're building the foundation for and installing. So the idea was to give people an idea of how involved this process is and how easy or not so easy it can be if you have a pre-approved product, how that impacts the timeline, and how the owner of the property's involvement can either help or hinder the timeline.
Yeah. And that, like Guido was saying, would be our ultimate goal as the city, would be to do whatever we can to streamline that process. Ultimately, we have to have a complete application package before we can issue a permit. But if it's a pre-approved plan, that means the review time goes down dramatically, as Anne mentioned. And even if it's not a pre-approved product, if we're working with somebody who can commit to submitting plans in a timely fashion, this is something that the city can review very quickly. Guido had mentioned that there are some outside agencies involved. So any ADUs that are 500 square feet and over have to pay school fees to the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. And then there's fees for ADUs that are 750 square feet and over. TAMC fees. The city can assess fees. We aren't currently, but that's something that could be looked at as part of the adopted fee schedule that isn't currently. And the Marina Coastwater District is the other entity that assesses fees. So early coordination with all of those agencies is really important, and we encourage anybody who comes in to apply for an ADU that they speak with those agencies early and often to make sure that their applications don't get held up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And in that process, what part of it is yours and what part of it is the owner of the property? Because I'm sure you guys are anxious to get it installed.
Oh,
Yeah.
And are more familiar with the process than someone who's doing this for the first time.
Exactly. Yeah, we handle all of it for the homeowner. So it's my team that handles the permit and the questions from the city. So we strive to turn around comments in a week. There are times when we can't. And yeah, like Guido mentioned, right? Sometimes it's totally on a Bodu to say like, we got backlogged. We didn't get back to our plan checker, right? Within a responsible, quick time as we'd like. But yeah, the goal is to turn it around in any comments in a week. Some comments are super easy to just pick up the phone and answer it. And that's obviously ideal. So yeah, certainly a lot is on our team and none of it is on the homeowner as far as, what do we need, unless it's recording a deed or something like that. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Commissioner Herr.
This is more general question, not specifically to Alberto, but does ADU require additional water permit since the state of California is very sensitive about waters here? I mean, if ADU size is bigger, like 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom.
Yeah. So we found that it's very dependent. I'll let kind of Alec share too your thoughts, but we found that it's very dependent on the site, right? And how many water credits are on the site, what's going on with the number of fixtures there. Typically we're hooking up to the main water source of the home. So not the water main in the street, but just where's the water service on the home, we're connecting to there. If they have a big house with a lot of fixtures and they want the 2-bedroom unit with obviously more bedroom count and a couple more fixtures, then okay, like maybe we need to upgrade the water service and upgrade the main lateral, which is more time, more cost, more money, and a separate permit. A lot of the time we've seen that isn't quite necessary, but it's super site specific and also specific to the region and the city. And yeah. It depends, but we have seen we've seen the whole gamut and we're prepared for it.
Great. Any other questions from commissioners? No, then thank you very much, Anne, for your presentation. And now we have one more. This is from Habitat for Humanity. And I hope I don't say this wrong. Satish Rishi.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and we just want to present a brief proposal that we have where we are trying to encourage the building of ADUs in the Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. I have a brief presentation. I'll go through very quickly. So I talked to Guido and Alec about this a couple of months ago, and he suggested I come and talk to the commission and the public about this. But, Habitat, we build homes for low-income families 80% or below AMI. And we have built about 58, 59 homes in the last 30 years we've been in operation here in Monterey and Santa Cruz counties. During that time, we've also built about 7 ADUs, and we started building ADUs in Santa Cruz back in the early 2000s. So we built a lot. We built ADUs under a lot of different programs. 3 were in partnership with the city of Santa Cruz when we were looking at providing additional income for seniors who were asset rich but cash poor. So what could we do to help them stay in the community that they had grown up in and they wanted to stay in? So we partnered with the city of Santa Cruz, and we came with a program called My House, My Own program. And we built 3 ADUs with the city of Santa Cruz, where the city of Santa Cruz put in some money. We put in some money and a lot of labor and the expertise and built, 3 ADUs. And separate from that, we also built 4 other ADUs that were financed by us. And we helped pass this law in the legislature called Tenancy in Common, whereby the ADU and the main home could be sold separately. But there are a lot of different caveats you have to meet. So it's not for everybody. I think it has to be a lot of different criteria has to be met. And then, in 2020, we applied to the HCD and we got a grant to build ADUs. And we are currently building 1 ADU in the city of Marina, which should be ready by the end of June, I hope. And we'll let you know when we have the opening ceremony or the dedication. So what we have is, we can finance or we can spend up to about $100,000 per unit per ADU. And given our limitations, we're looking at maybe financing up to 5 units. But this program is only for low-income families. And the way the financing would work is it'll be a loan for 30 years to the owner, but it's at 0%. And there are no payments required. The homeowner can pay if they want to, but there are no interim payments required. It's a balloon payment after 30 years. But of course, ADUs cost a lot more than $100,000. So we have to figure out how much the ADU will cost. So we think we can fund up to about 40% of the ADU cost. And however, if there is a transfer of title, if somebody sells the home, then in that case, the loan is due and payable, and then we get the money back. And our goal is then to use the money for somebody else, building an ADU for somebody else. There's some restrictions. The ADU can't be used for short-term rental, which I guess is probably what many of the cities are adopting anyway. What we're looking for is, we need that the homeowner is 80% or below, and we need to have proof of income. We also want to make sure that the homeowner has the balance of the 60% of the funds. Otherwise, we don't want to start a project and then be held up because there are no more funds available. We also want to make sure that the homeowner has an approved plan and a valid permit from the city or the county. We also want to make sure that the homeowner is going to be using a licensed contractor and that they have a signed contract, and we'll get involved in the contract to make sure it's a valid contract, the contractor has the right license, a good contractor. And then once we start, we can have quarterly check-in meetings to review the process, which is exactly what we're doing with the ADU that we're building currently in Marina. So, how can the city help? We are a small organization, so as the city gets permits for ADU, they can help create a partnership and publicize the opportunity we have. And once the plan and permit is completed, since the city has more information about the owner, they could help us screen the applications to make sure that the homeowner is actually a low-income person, versus us doing all that legwork. And then, they can introduce the selected families to Habitat. So that is a program we have, and we have a couple of different variations. And in this case, there are no restrictions. But if we fund for more than $100,000, then we could probably do a separate loan for maybe $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. But in that case, we require that the homeowner rent the ADU to a low-income family. So that way, it helps to create low-income housing. But in the current program we have, there are no restrictions. So this is what, we've been talking to different cities and different counties, talk to Salinas, talk to Santa Cruz, talk to Marina, talk to Seaside. So we have limited funds, so first come, first serve. So as we go through the process, we'd like to, our goal is to build housing for and help, low-income families. So we're trying to publicize this and make sure that, we get the word out.
Okay, thank you. Do commissioners have any questions at this point? Let's see. I don't see any hand. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. I'm going to start with Audra this time. I don't know whether Brian raised their hand first, but I'm going to start with Commissioner Audra Walton.
Thank you again, Chair Amadeo. I apologize. Can I just have your name one more time? The wonderful human from Habitat for Humanity, and then I'll ask.
Yeah, my name is Satish, and I'm the CEO for Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay.
Excellent. I love it. Satish, do you have a last name?
Rishi, R-I-S-H-I.
R-A-S-H-Y?
R-I-S-H-I.
Thank you so much. So thank you for all that you're doing. It's very encouraging. I'm so happy that you're on the call with us this evening. My question is with respect to, and this might be for city staff, but my question is how would we, are we able to screen ADU applicants for low income families? And if we are, will we be screening all of the applications for that kind of language inside of the permit? Is there a place on the permit application that states that this would be for a low income family? How is that going to work? That's so interesting to me. Thank you.
Currently we are not doing income verification. If we were to partner with Habitat, we would have to kind of work that out with them. There are some Public Record Act request implications in terms of, some information that is confidential. So if we ended up partnering with Habitat, we'd probably end up having them do that on the front end so that none of the stuff is a public record. But for a normal ADU, we would not be asking for income information. So.
And then I guess how do we partner? Is that what we're doing this evening, is creating that partnership, or that goes before city council? I would like to advocate strongly for this partnership.
Yeah, we can certainly reach out to Satish and try to figure out how to, I understand he has a limited number of funds, so it is gonna, I don't know where you are, Satish, in the process in terms of have you already accepted some applicants from Marina or not? Or I'd have to kind of follow up with Satish, so.
Yeah, none from Marina so far. Well, we have one from Marina that we reached out on our own.
Right.
And we are building that ADU, but we have had requests from other cities and counties.
Okay.
But what one way to partner would be that, again, I don't know how it works with the city, but it's not the homeowner has to be a low income, but to the extent that you can publicize and let people know that if they need financing, if they can reach out, to us, go to a website. That would be one way. A preferred way would be if you can do the income qualification and then you send it to us, because then that's less work for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we can certainly follow up, Commissioner Walton. Yeah, we can certainly follow up with Satish and potentially get him to speak at the city council so we can further kind of get the word out. So.
Okay, Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Satish, for the presentation. As with all the presentations, this is really important work that's being done. So I appreciate you being here. As it turns out, I helped build the Palm Avenue house about 10 years ago, which really means that your organization invested more in me and training me than you probably got out of me. But either way, I really appreciate the opportunity. So I have two questions. One is, with the ADUs, do you plan to use that same community support model? Are you getting folks to help come, or is that kind of something of a bygone era? So that's question one. And then two, you heard the presentation from Abodu, I presume. Is Habitat looking at that prefab kind of business model, and maybe just anything you might be willing to say about that versus the new construction kind of model?
Sure. Well, thank you, Brian, for working on Palm Avenue. I'll talk about that within a few minutes, but I'll answer your questions. The goal is still to use the collaborative model we have, where we use volunteers and get donations in kind. However, right now we're working on a 11-home project in Live Oak, so most of our construction crew is quite busy. So in this case, we are trying to use sort of a combination of getting some donated products and maybe some volunteer work, but in this case, we would prefer to have the homeowner contract with a licensed contractor, and then they would be the main party, and we would help. We would help by doing the financing of it. So that's what we do, and then we have looked at manufactured homes or prefab homes. I forget what the right term would be. But what I found is that from a cost perspective, they are not as cheap as what we can build for. At least that's what we've seen. Because when you take into account the transportation of the home from the factory to the unit, that could be $10,000 to $15,000, and then all the foundation work that has to be done, and the plumbing and the wiring that needs to be done, that is additional work which is not quite captured in the price. So we are looking at that, and if you see somebody that has good quality and good pricing, that would be something that we would definitely consider, because it really reduces the time to ownership.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. If there are no other questions from commissioners, I do have a question for you, and that's about deed restricted property. So if you're doing the property and the ADU has to be for low income and the owner of the property has to be low income, is the ADU going to be deed restricted? So, you've got an elderly couple who own it and it's about giving them some income so they can stay in their home. That's the way I understand it. Elderly couple passes away. Now it's part of the estate. And is it sold? If it's sold at market rate, you're getting your money back out of the estate. But does that original ADU that was restricted to low income, does it remain restricted as low income, or do we lose that benefit?
We lose that benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, because once the loan is repaid, then there's no
restriction.
There is a restriction.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions at this time? And
If I may indulge you for a second, since Vice Chair Brian mentioned about the home that he built in Palm Avenue. So we had 3 homes in Palm Avenue, and one of them, the owner left. He passed away. So we have this home back on the market, and we are soliciting families, and we have talked to the city, and we have a few applications have come in, but I'd like to have the opportunity to put this application out saying that, ideally, if you live and work in Marina and you're a low-income family, we do have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home that could be available to a family who is willing to pay a mortgage and be able to meet this criteria that we have. So we already have a couple of applicants, but there's no harm in spreading the word out. So I'd like to have the opportunity to just, put that out there and let the public know.
And I have to say, I got the opportunity to see those when they were completed. It was very exciting. I also, this 2-bedroom, 1-bath, I don't know how many people understand square footage, but 1,100 square feet for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath is a very comfortable sized home.
Yes.
And I think anybody that wanted a 2-bed, that's a lot of living space that's in that 1,100 square feet. So I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. And I'm impressed with the houses in the first place. I was very excited when they were built. You also did one off of Cardoza, where there had been a fire, and you guys came in and purchased the lot and built the home there. And it fits perfectly in the neighborhood. Nobody would know by looking at the house when the houses were built in the 1960s or 70s, and your house fits the style of the homes that are there. You really did a great job.
Well, thank you. I invite all of you to come and look at what we're building in Live Oak in Santa Cruz. We're building 11 homes, 4 are done, 7 more to go. But the families, 4 families have moved in. So come take a look and see what we're doing.
Yeah. And look at the corner of Palm and what is that, Sunset? Sunrise?
Something like that. I just know the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they really are beautiful homes.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the
did a great
opportunity.
job.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you do more in Marina.
Yes.
Okay. If there is nothing else, then we are going to move on. And we have no action items tonight or public hearings. No discussion items, so commissioner comments and staff informational reports. Do any commissioners first have any comments they would like to make?
This is more out of curiosity. How can we tell which house was built by Habitat for Humanity or not? I mean, since you mentioned about these houses on Palm Street and in Santa Cruz.
It's
Did
on, there are 3 and they're on the corner of Palm and I think it's Sunrise is the cross street.
Mhm.
And everything else there is apartments. So you'll know right away that it is the Habitat homes.
Oh, I see.
And it's on the northwest corner of Palm and Sunrise. There's 3.
Yeah, and I mean, if the ones in Santa Cruz, I would like to have a look as well if I know the location.
Yeah, can you
Sure. I
provide
can-
the location?
Yeah, I can put in the chat room, or I can let you know. It's the address is 2340 Harper Street.
Harbor,
no,
Harbor.
Harper, Harper in Santa Cruz, 95062. And we have a couple of pictures, and we have a YouTube video that we took last week showing, the inside of the homes and, what the aerial view looks like. So feel free to go to our website and look at that too. But, well, let me know when you're coming and I'll give you a personal tour.
Oh, that would be great. Well, thank you.
That's fantastic. So any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, staff informational reports. Do you have anything for us, Guido?
No, we had a special meeting with the city council on Tuesday to talk about some trees that were unfortunately removed within the Dunes project without permits. We will be organizing a meeting with the city council. It probably will end up being a joint meeting with the planning commission to walk phase 3 of the Dunes, because they do have a tree permit and a tentative map that's going to be coming before the planning commission in the next 30 to 45 days. So I will keep you guys briefed on that. We have to be careful with the Brown Act in terms of you guys all being there, and I'll work all that out. And I don't believe we have any items for May 26th. So the next time we'll see you guys is June 9th, I believe.
Okay. Quickly, I've been involved in other joint meetings between council and commission, and they've had to be noticed, and the public has to be included if all the council and all of the commission, if you have a quorum, are there. So I'm presuming this will be a notice the same way that it will be available to the public as well.
And that's great. And then just the added complication is the council asked for it to be an on-site meeting. So when we publish the agenda, we have to tell the public that, oh, it's going to start at this house or this address, and then walk the property, and then, yeah. So,
okay.
But I'll work all that out, and I'll keep the commission informed of that. So
thank you. Vice Chair McCarthy.
Just real briefly, I'm just getting word that today the California Coastal Commission had heard the Poseidon desal plant in Huntington Beach, and apparently they unanimously declined or rejected the project. And so for anyone who's trying to keep up on what's happening in Marina, maybe something worth checking out and learning about why the Coastal Commission decided the way they did.
Thank you for the information. Okay, if there are no other comments, I'm assuming no correspondence because nothing is listed there. And so we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. It was a very interesting meeting.
Thank you.
have a good evening, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.